Hi, I'm Marcus, and welcome to the License to Kill podcast, where pest control professionals meet cutting-edge expertise, industry insights, and a whole lot of camaraderie. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting your journey as a PMP, this podcast dives into everything that makes our industry tick. From advanced techniques and groundbreaking products to hilarious field stories and the real talk about the challenges we face in our industry. Join us as we explore the science, art, and community behind pest control, celebrating the people who work tirelessly to keep our world safe, healthy, and pest-free. As always, stay sharp, stay connected, stay legendary. Let's start the show. Welcome, Adam. Welcome to License to Kill podcast show. Good to see you. Mahalo, right, over there in Hawaii. We got Adam Holt here with us, BCE, board certified entomologist. Of course, you've done quite a bit out there. So introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your experience. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Aloha again. Thanks for having me on the show. Super excited to always be here and give back to the community. Adam Holt, aka Hawkeye Holt. That nickname comes from my lovely 2010 vision. So it's still 2010, surprisingly enough, even at my age. And been in the industry 25 years, born and raised in Florida. Since then, I've lived in Colorado, Michigan, Philadelphia, California, and upper northern and southern, and now here in Hawaii. I've literally traveled all of the continental US states except for North Dakota and Alaska. I've actually driven through every single one, oddly enough.
Holy
And
cow.
yeah, and so just as far as my pest control background, I mean, I've done everything from working on the public health vector side with mosquito control to, being on working for companies like Terminex, Advanced IPM, Innovative Pest Solutions, all PCT top 100 companies. I've been on the software end. I'm on a patent for an electronic rodent monitoring device, which is really cool. I've worked on the manufacturing side, the distributor side. So I've been in the fumigation side as well. Not the distributor side, sorry.
Oh, wow.
Manufacturing side and then the fumigation side. So I've done a little bit of everything.
So everything from in the trenches to vector control, disease control. I know you were talking a little about being on the different software sides. So man, you've had your hands on everything. You posted a couple weeks back that you had your thesis from your time in college. You never got a chance to publish it. What was your thesis about?
My master's thesis, yeah. So I did my undergrad and my graduate degree at University of Florida, both in entomology. So my master's thesis, I wrote a Florida field guide to bird lice.
Wow. How
Yeah,
how long
so
did it take you to put that together?
I spent 4 years on my master's, and so I spent 3 summers in the Florida Keys. There's a lot of islands in the Florida Keys as they wrap around. So I was on the northern key, the middle key, and Marathon, and then Key West. So basically Tavernier, Marathon, and Key West. And I spent 3 summers in the Keys, picking ectoparasites off of about 90 different species of birds, everything from lice to mites to relapsing fever ticks, hippobossid louse flies, you name it. I mean, literally the other day I was driving with my friends we were out eating and I saw a dead bird on the side of the road and I almost stopped to pick it up to bring it home to pick the lice off of it.
Oh, so I was just about to ask you. Okay, so what does it look like? How does it describe how it is to be a student in the field collecting these birds? I mean, are you catching them with a net? Are you trapping them? Are they dead samples? Or how are you finding these mites?
Yeah, so at least the ones that I did my master's thesis on, those were all rehabilitation centers. So they were all live birds.
Oh, rehabilitation centers. Okay,
Yeah.
so like injured animal that the general public brought in.
But they were literally only birds. So it was specifically bird rehabilitation centers.
Okay, well, I'm sure that's probably very popular in the Florida area. A lot of yeah,
especially
yeah, a lot of
especially in the
popular there.
Keys with all the saltwater species, the marsh species. There's so many different species that, yeah, like I said, I mean, I literally filtered off of 90 different species.
And so, how long did it take you to put together that entire thesis? Like, how long did you work on that? Like, how long did you spend in the Keys going around collecting those samples?
I spent 3 summers, so 3 summers and a total of
Three
four
different
years on my
summers.
master's. Yeah.
Wow, wow. And so, are we going to be able to be one of the lucky few who get to see it when you publish it? You gonna
Uh,
you
you
gonna
know,
make sure you send it to LPK first?
Yeah. Lewis, I think it's Lewis Sorkin. He reached out to me on that post, and he basically is going to try to help me publish it. So the challenge right now is if I go ahead and publish it, then I can't use it for a PhD.
Hmm.
So if I
Okay.
want to try to continue with that same research into a PhD, then I would have to technically not publish it yet.
So, okay, touching on that a little bit, I'm just a technician. I chose not to really go do much college, did part-time college. So, explain to our audience, what that process looks like step by step. Which degrees do you pursue? How do you become a board certified entomologist? I know there's been a big debate on LinkedIn and all recently
Right.
between ACEs and BCEs, and so for those who are interested in becoming a BCE, talk a little bit about that process. What are the layers to it, and what are the downsides, like you were mentioned, or not downsides, but what are some of the navigation issues that you made regarding trying to getting a PhD in your master's and all that?
I mean, I think if we start with step one, I mean, you have to get your undergrad and at least the crazy part is like I feel like personally you should have to get an undergrad in entomology to become a board certified entomologist. With that being said, if you go to ESA Entomological Society of America and you go to apply to take your BCE certification, I believe you can just have a bachelor's degree or an undergraduate degree in a related science.
Okay, like environmental science or environmental
Anything
entomology
that's
and stuff.
related, any related science to entomology, biological science, anything that's related.
Or
So
biology.
for me, it took me 5 years to get my undergraduate degree. I graduated with I think 153 credit hours, and you only need 120.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then and so when you finally end up getting your degree, tell us a little bit about that journey right afterwards. What did you do with it? What was your day one move? Did you contact Terminex? Did you contact, you know?
No, actually, so we are rewinding in time. Sorry, that's a word. It's a tongue twister, but we're rewinding in time. So I graduated in 2002 with my undergraduate degree. I was already working for the Department of Agriculture in their entomology department. I'd already been working for them for 2 years, and I was working half time for a diptera specialist and half time for an araneologist, aka the Florida Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
So I literally took care of like the pink salmon bird eater, the fourth largest tarantula in the entire world. It was the size of a dinner plate. Like it was the craziest, coolest stuff. So I had crazy live specimens from all over the world, and I was already working for them, so I stayed with them for a little bit, and then I took a job as my first job out of college was teaching eighth grade science and high school biology at a very small, low income school.
So okay, so teaching has been kind of speckled across your career the whole time. Thank you for taking your time to teach us today. So okay, education's a big part of your life. That's cool.
Yeah, so I did that, but unfortunately, because of that school, I only survived for one semester, and then luckily, I got offered a full time job back at Department of Agriculture. So I was like, went right back to Department of Ag real fast. Yeah, and then I stayed with
Yeah.
Department of Ag for another 3 years, and while I was with Department of Ag, I started doing my master's degree part time because they were paying for it. That just became very overwhelming to try to work a full time job. I was working a part time job retail, and then I was trying to go to grad school part time. And I finally was just like, this is way too much trouble. So I got lucky enough that I was able to, through all my networking, I got offered a athletic tutor scholarship. So I got to tutor like Tim Tebow and all those guys and actually
Oh
get
wow.
paid for my grad school.
Oh, okay. So that's actually a pretty unique little opportunity. See, guys, pursuing the bug career, you might find yourselves in the presence of all kinds of cool people and getting to experience all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah,
That's
it was
awesome.
it was amazing. I got to tutor Joakim Noah. What was he, rookie for Chicago Bulls? Like all
Wow.
kinds of cool
Oh,
stuff. And
wow.
so that was a really cool experience. So I did that for 2 years, and then from there I basically went on to leave Gainesville because I was tired of Gainesville, Florida, and I left and moved over to St. Augustine, Florida, which is on the coast. And that led me to a environmental health specialist role that I did for a year. Then I segued back into teaching and taught seventh and eighth grade science for a year. And then from there, I got offered the job. They actually did a huge cut in the school system. It was '07, '08 when we had the really crazy, I think the financial hardship and
Yeah.
all the house, what do you call it, the
Housing
housing
prices,
crash. Yeah.
right? Local tax dollars probably plummeted for school districts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's when I actually, oddly enough, I found the advertisement for mosquito control, and they were hiring an education specialist. So I applied for that and got that role, and I was basically their education specialist slash public relations slash computer person slash like everything.
So I bet you got to do some pretty interesting stuff with the press in regards to vector control if you did anything in mosquitoes, huh?
I did. We actually, crazy enough, we were one of 50. So in Florida, there's 67 counties. We were one of 15
Mhm.
independent mosquito control districts, which means we had our own board of commissioners. And
Okay.
so, with that being said, we got to operate a little differently. So we were, I think, St. Johns County is about 627 square miles. So it's a pretty large county. And in that
Right.
county, we had 10 predetermined locations for chicken coops where we were doing the Sentinel chicken program. Are you familiar with that?
Nope. Tell me about it.
So the Sentinel chicken program, in each coop we had 6 chickens, and basically every week you would bleed the chickens, you would take their blood, send the blood off to a virology lab in a certain location, and then they would test all of that for different mosquito-borne arboviruses such as West Nile virus,
Yeah.
Eastern equine encephalitis, dengue, whatever is like hot topic at the time. So one summer we had almost all 60 chickens test positive for West Nile virus.
Oh wow. So what does the vector control look like whenever you have to do for like a large area or a large population area? I mean, what are some of the efforts that you guys can actually partake to control the mosquito outbreaks?
So in a situation like that, where it was obviously a very large, large land outbreak, that actually turned into aerial application of pesticides.
Aerial applications,
Yeah. So at that point, we were
flyovers.
using at that point we were using dibrome, and we were only people got so scared about it, but it wasn't. We were only using like 1 ounce per acre. It's so diluted.
Wow. Okay, so then that's kind of nice to be able to dispel. So you always hear about, chemtrails this, chemtrail, but when you actually dive into the science, there are good people out here doing good work that are trying to help the society, help our communities out. And it's not some big conspiracy to hurt anyone or anything like that. We're controlling mosquitoes, folks. That's all that's going on.
I mean, you have two choices. We either control the mosquitoes, or you can contract a mosquito-borne arbovirus.
Right, right.
I mean,
Is
so
there anything on the ground that's meaningful worth doing? I know there's like into care buckets and that kind of stuff, or
yeah,
biological
this
controls.
is so crazy because I literally just created a video for mosquito control that I'm about to post after this podcast. So because I was outside doing planning earlier and they were eating me up, and so this is a perfect opportunity to let people know 3 out of the 4 stages of mosquitoes are where? Where do they reside?
In the water.
In the water. Perfect. So we have the egg stage, the larval stage, and the pupal stage. So the beautiful thing is you can go to any like Home Depot or Lowe's. You can buy these things called mosquito dunks. Have you heard of them?
Right. Of course.
They look like little donuts, and basically you can take them and break them up, and you can like drop them in any standing water source. They affect no non-target species, so which is a beautiful thing. And so you can put them in literally a horse trough. You can put them in a dog bowl. I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, literally a dog bowl. You should be changing out the water anyway, right? But the reality is, you can put them in there if you need to. But the active ingredient? And do you know what the active ingredient is? Are you familiar with it?
Mm-mm.
The
I've used the product several times, but no, I don't remember what the active is.
So the active ingredient in mosquito dunks is called BTI, or Bacillus thuringiensis israelensis. All right. And so the
Okay.
backstory to this is that this guy's over in Israel. He's walking through a desert with his friend, and he comes across a puddle of water with dead mosquito larvae. Right. And he's like, what's going on here? This is water. They should be alive. So he actually somehow, I don't know if he had a where exactly the I don't know the exacts, but he was able to scoop up all the dirt and all of the water. He went back and tested it, and that's where mosquito dunks derived from, was from this story. And so what it is Bacillus thuringiensis is aka sister species to Bacillus anthracis, aka anthrax.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you went
There's a
outside right
headline for
now,
you.
Marcus, and you dug in the soil, you could get cutaneous anthrax.
And that's not going to hurt anybody, is it?
I mean, cutaneous anthrax will hurt you, but the whole point I'm trying to
Yeah.
let you know is that BTI is a natural soil dwelling bacterium. And so the whole point of that
Gotcha.
is that it doesn't affect non target species. The beauty of these mosquito dunks is, like I said, you can put it in any standing water source. So if there's something you can't drain, like a pool, right? You got pools that are go
Right.
stagnant all the time. Toss some mosquito dunks in, make sure you have enough to cover the proper square footage or cubic footage, and you can help fight the bite.
See, in the Houston area, we have a lot of standing water for drainage. It's very flat land, very flat area. And unlike over in Florida, there's really no underground, aquifer system or any kind of tunnels or caves or anything to kind of absorb it. It's just dirt and clay around here. So there's all these artificial, dugout, just
Yep.
areas for water retention areas. And so yeah, we do a lot of mosquito dunk BTI stuff. So
Love it.
okay, I know you recently created your new consulting firm. Go ahead and get a little plug for that. What's the name of it? Tell it a little about it.
Yep. So it's named at Bug Consulting. I'm still coming up with the exact name, but right now it's just named at Bug because that follows all my branding and all my social media accounts. So it's name that Bug Consulting. Name that Bug derived from COVID when I started my social media. I originally wanted to do name that bug, like T as in Tom, but
Hmm.
name that bug was taken. So name that bug just became, it just sounded cool and I kind of went with it. But
Right,
from the
right.
consulting side, I mean, I'm just excited to be able to really my main goal, my main passion throughout my entire career has been to help people, to help students, to help anybody. And so with my business, that's just what I'm trying to do is just help anybody and any company and any end user be the best version of themselves they can be. Part of it's also protecting them. So doing anything from like a pest control contract analysis on the end user side to for a pest control company themselves coming in and just helping them create efficiencies, save money. I mean, Marcus, when I worked for Advanced IPM, and within the first month, I saved them about $25,000 just from reviewing all of their software contracts.
Holy cow,
And
that is a
so
ton
I
of
just
money.
Yeah, I mean, see, the weird thing is to me and to you, that's a lot of money, but to a company that's a $38 million company, that's not
Yeah,
a lot of
but
money.
I mean, yeah, but that's finding a lot within the cracks, right? I mean, imagine how many technicians, right? I mean, you could probably pay, what, three, 4 or 5 technicians a monthly salaries with just that, right? So I mean, that does translate into jobs.
I mean,
Uh,
at
so
that time, $25,000 was like what? I think like a quarter of my salary with that job. So I was like, I just literally, I was like, I just took care of like a quarter of my salary for you.
right, exactly, exactly. So, so you help out with inefficiencies. I know you help out with the softwares. You've been a part of. You said it was Serve Suite, I think, was at the time.
Yep, serve
I'm
suite.
familiar
Yep,
with Serve Suite. So you definitely have found out good ways to root out the inefficiencies in businesses. I know that we had that little a run-in when it came to the quiz, right? And so you do a
right.
lot of pest identification stuff. You do a lot of ensuring that the content the companies put out there is factual, that it's actually been checked by board certified entomologists, that you're not just putting out, especially in this world of AI, putting out bad information. And I think that's a good segue into kind of our other conversations that we've been talking about lately with AI about trash in and trash out, right? If good reputable companies or companies that are supposed to be reputable are putting out bad information out there, that's also training the AIs, which are trained to sweep the internet for that kind of content. So tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've been doing with AI, or some of the things that you've noticed as far as when you've been helping these companies interact with their softwares.
Yeah, I mean, so oddly enough, I've been contacted by quite a few people on LinkedIn to try to like do just like you said, help them develop their AI, right? Help them to develop it to like, make it even better. And so, I mean, personally, I've played with AI, but I have not, been a part of actually developing the AI, I
Mhm.
will say that like you said, I mean, at the end of the day, I am a advocate of AI. I'm an advocate of Chat GPT. I think it's a great thing. It helps you to create a template for a presentation in literally seconds, right?
Right.
But the reality again is that
Powerful tool.
you definitely have to fact check it. You definitely have to make sure whatever you're getting out of it is proper and great. I mean, a lot of it's going to be correct, but then is somebody aware enough to know what's not correct? That's the challenge, right? We'll go back to like your whole thing with your place you're working with the quiz they put out, right? They created a quiz. Whoever put that quiz out, are they knowledgeable enough to know what was incorrect that came out of that the AI spit out? This is
Mm-hmm.
where it kind of comes back to like it's beneficial to have a board certified entomologist on staff for like a million reasons, right?
Right. 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 Both to look at those contracts and to kind of look at your service agreements, but as well as your back as a company when you're putting out content, making sure that you're putting out high quality content that makes you look like the professionals that we're supposed to be representing that we are to the public. So definitely.
Yeah, I mean, and also developing technical training programs. I mean, I've done that for many of companies where I've literally developed their entire annual programs, including, a different technical training each month where it focuses on whatever target pest species they want to focus on for the seasonal changes. I mean, there's a million things that a BCE can help you out with, especially if they have the background pest control experience like I have paired with the BCE and the educational part.
Right, right. So, okay, Tanya. Okay, going back to the great debate, the aces versus the BCE. You have a little bit of a leg up there, being that you've got a chance to do both of them, right? So you have the field experience, but you also have the book experience. Those 27 years. So recently, you told me that you were getting out of education and you're stepping back into the pest control world, stepping back into the pest control industry. Where are you looking to go? Where can we use someone who has so much field experience, but also so much technical experience as well?
I think for me, I mean, I'm just looking right now to just start the business and try to get it off the ground. I mean, I've already got a few contracts, which is obviously awesome. The more contracts I can get would obviously be a blessing, and I humble myself for all of that. I mean, at the end of the day, though, I mean, I just had a conversation with somebody on the East Coast, and I'm trying to help them develop an entire training program. And so, a lot can be done remotely. I'm also willing to
Yep.
be in person if that's necessary. And so, some people really want the in person thing. Some people are okay with the remote thing. I think it just depends on. There's so much to tackle with companies, especially growing companies, that for me, I think it's
Yep.
just best to like book an appointment with me through my Calendly on my LinkedIn, and then I like to have a conversation with people and like try to do some discovery and figure out what are their pain points and what needs to be the priority of, resolving those pain points in whatever order that is.
I think that's a great service, and I know that there's a lot of businesses, especially those small to medium sized businesses. They could use every bit of help that we can get. Everybody's been talking about how the big brands have been coming through, buying up, everything that's in their wake, and the small to medium guys. They need every leg up that they can get, every strategy that they can get in order to survive, in order to eliminate waste and to make sure that they're really operating at that top tier so that way they can compete in their markets. So I know we definitely need more guys like you out here interacting with us, interacting with business owners. So I'm a field tech, right? So I spend a lot of my time out in the field. You were speaking recently on the Beauties and Beasties podcast about some of the smart technology traps and the I think it's PetSense that you work with. Is that correct?
Yep.
Some
Yep.
of the PetSense stuff. So I'm highly intrigued on this kind of equipment. I think I know there's a kind of what is it? There's a joke that's stood around for a long time. Don't reinvent the rat trap. Don't people always trying to reinvent it. But I actually do think we've reached a point in time in history where innovation is upon us. There's so much going on, and we need to be utilizing those tools. We need to be open-minded to those tools and not just stuck with the antiquated ways. As effective as they may be at times, like you said, it does create efficiencies. So talk to us a little bit about some of those products that you're working with, and maybe we can talk about different some scenarios that they can be utilized.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about electronic rodent ERMs or electronic rodent monitoring devices, Marcus, there's a plethora of options. You know what I mean? I mean,
Right.
Corteva recently sold theirs to Ecolab, aka
Okay.
Dow AgroSciences. So theirs is no longer available, and anybody who was using it had to basically pull it if they were not a current Ecolab or sorry, any pest control companies had to pull it. Obviously, they're not going to be an Ecolab customer because they're a competing pest control company, and so
Right.
that's part of, I think, for me, that's a big challenge, right? Because I can't even imagine being a pest control company using an ERM and all of a sudden you find out that it's been sold and you are no longer going to have the support and you have to pull it. Could you even imagine?
Right. Yeah. Especially if you had invested pretty heavily in purchasing a lot of reusable equipment that you know what I mean on redeploying and
Right.
redeploying. Yeah. Absolutely.
So with theirs though, I mean, theirs was obviously good technology. I mean, there's Skyhawk has theirs out right now, which is if
Mhm.
you haven't heard of them, they're a good one as well. Bell Sensing is, a great
Yeah,
one
the
as well.
IQ.
So you've got Bell. I mean, PestSense with what I'm helping them bring to the states. It's not obviously starting in the states yet. We're just trying to get it working in the states and get it introduced. And so it's not out there in the field. It's in the field as far as in trials, but it's not in the field right now as far as being, actually used in the states. Now, if we go over to like UK, Australia, New Zealand, it is already out in the field being used by tons of customers.
So talk to me a little bit about the different types of features. I've heard that there are some that run on Bluetooth, some that run on Wi-Fi.
Yep.
What does that mean for owner operators? What does that mean for technicians? Is there a difference?
Yeah, so like Bell Sensing is Bluetooth technology, right? And you've got the Evo
Mhm.
Rodent base stations with the IQ trays, and then you have the 24/7 trappers, which is the plastic version of the Tin Cat, the metal version. And then they also have a Snap Trap, which is awesome. So the thing with Bell Sensing is that it's great. It's great residentially for the Snap Traps. It's great commercially for the Evo Rodent base stations and the 24/7 trapper. However, the only way you can get the data is you have to be on site and you have to be within 100 feet of the stations because it is all Bluetooth,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
But
Yes.
think about this, Marcus. If you're at a commercial property with 500 Evo Rodent base stations, and now instead of having to bend over to check them all, you're walking around and the data's going, you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So not only is this creating an efficiency for the company, but it's also doing less wear and tear on your knees, right? And your back. And now you can
Right.
focus on hotspot activity. Whenever you get all that data, you can be like, wait a minute, there's a bunch of activity on these three stations. I'm going to go now and focus on these three stations and do a little more inspection and try to figure out what's going on. So
And
I think what,
so
go ahead.
that's the Bluetooth. So Bluetooth has to be pretty close. Are you saying that some of the Wi-Fi technology allows you to be off-site or remote to check some of that equipment?
So I'm not sure about when you say Wi-Fi technology, but so if we went to like PestSense or ActiveSense or Skyhawk, those are all LoRa-based technology, which means they're true
Or Lord?
24/7 remote monitoring. So I can literally
Okay.
right now hold up my watch, and then if I got an alert, it would just pop up on my watch for me.
Okay, so that's more or less, I guess, what I'm talking about. Okay. Yeah, so long distance versus short range. I think so. As someone who would use this stuff in the field, the short range stuff sounds great for the accounts, like my weekly accounts or multiple times a week account where they
Yep.
need verification. All of those devices have been checked weekly, right? So they have more than just monitoring, but they need to make sure that the a technician is actually out there doing their job, walking the property, doing those inspections. And then it sounds like you said the LoRa technology would
LoRa-based
be
technology, LORA,
L O
LoRa-based
R
technology.
LoRa-based technology. That sounds like to me would be very effective in like a residential situation where, say, you have a TR technician who's monitoring 5 or 8 different houses that they've got rodent programs going at, where instead of having to waste resources driving around town checking each of these houses every single day, that you can wake up in the morning and okay, these are the houses that you need to go address, that have something in the traps. And I mean, you may still want to do your regular interval, checkups in person, but it just helps to prioritize those accounts, or at least help to prevent any dead ones from getting stuck, stinking around and overstaying, if you will.
So I love your mentality there, but oddly enough, the industry's kind of gone a little bit opposite, right? So they've done LoRa-based technology, or the true 24/7 remote monitoring is actually more commercial based, right?
Okay.
Because the reality is that you can now, like you said, sitting from your computer, you can prioritize your route, right? And it's also
Mhm.
more on the wildlife side. For wildlife, you definitely want the 24/7 remote monitoring because now we can
Yes.
obviously with wildlife, most of the time you have to check the stations every 24 hours anyway, right?
Yes. Right.
But a lot of
Literally.
states are now starting to adopt the technology to allow you to use this remote check as an actual 24-hour check.
Right. See, and that makes sense to me to be able to at least submit the data and say, okay, we checked with the device in some capacity, as long as it's transmitting back properly and not giving some kind of like error or code or something like that. That seems uh, I mean, otherwise what's the point of the technology? If you still have to have the physical presence, yeah, it might help prioritize things, but I think ideally the reason why people want to go with the electronic traps is to not check traps, or not to unnecessarily check traps that don't need to be checked, right? I mean, and
Yeah,
that's
I
kind of
mean,
the
and
idea.
look at it from a residential perspective. Let's say you've set snap traps in a ceiling, right, or in a wall void, or in an attic, right? You think about it. You go to Miss Jones's house, and she's not there, even though she's supposed to be there. And with this Bell
Right,
sensing 24/7 trapper, you can still get the data. You can walk up to the house, and you're within 100 feet of that data, of that actual trap. So you can
right.
now get the data, and you can say, you know what, Miss Jones, I swung by, but with our technology, I was able to see that you don't have any activity. So I'm just leaving you a voicemail to let you know there's no activity in your house. And if you have any questions, please reach out. Otherwise, I'll be back in a week to check or whatever.
Yes, yes. See, that to me makes a lot more sense. And so when it talk, what are the price differences on some of these electronic rodent equipment versus the traditional snappies? At what point does that cost break even, or at what point is it worth using the electronic stuff and may have to pay a higher price up front? Like how many traps is
So
it, or how much,
I'm gonna play a little game with you, right? We'll call this, so on the Bluetooth stuff. We'll go with Bell Sensing. Do you think Bell Sensing is more expensive, or do you think the 24/7 remote monitoring is more expensive?
Ooh, that's a good question. Okay, I I'm going with the 24/7 monitoring, the lower base.
Yeah, the lore base is more expensive because we didn't even talk about the fact that whenever you want to use something like any lore based technology, you have to have a gateway as a base, right? And
Right.
so the gateway is like a portable router modem that you would have for your internet. So anywhere you go to basically set this up, you've got to plug in this gateway. And then that gateway, all the devices communicate to the gateway, and then all of that information communicates then to the cloud,
Hmm.
right? So with Bell Sensing, there is no gateway. It's basically the Bluetooth Wi-Fi technology, right? And that's where I go on
Right.
site and I get all that data. And so Bell Sensing, Pest Sense, Active Sense, Skyhawk, that 24/7 remote monitoring is going to be definitely more expensive than the Bell Sensing. The reality is not always where, what's the better version or like what costs more. The reality is what are the customer's needs and what's the best solution for them, right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, if you have a customer that like is just having a crazy, I mean, one thing I like, and let's just take a step back. One thing I like about any of these technologies is that you could buy like Marcus, if you started your own pest control business today, you could buy a set, or when I call it a set, you could buy 3 or 4 Evo rodent base stations, some 24/7 trappers, and some the T-Rex traps over here, and you could rotate them into multiple locations as you need to use them.
Right.
Same
Right.
thing
Right.
with same thing with Pestance. You could buy a set of 4 devices, 4 stations, and then like one gateway, and then you could rotate that as you need it. You don't necessarily have to like put it in every single account. It could be something that could
Right.
help you with those key accounts that you have issues with.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that would definitely be, like you said, it's not necessarily a product to just have monitoring every account everywhere all the time. I think that's a little bit excessive. No, I think you're definitely right. It's something, the benefit is the reusability, right? Is to be able to have multiple different rodent programs, clean, disinfect, get those traps in a good state and then put them back out in the field. That would make the only way to really use them.
Now, with that being said, before I left Advanced IPM, I had helped them install 5,000 Evo rodent base stations for Bell Sensing.
Okay.
So I mean,
That is a
like
ton. That is a ton.
they were moving to a platform where they were basically any commercial property they were proposing, it was just Bell Sensing only.
So when we talk about these kinds of devices, I know that you kind of got into a little bit of a heated back and forth on the beauties and beasties in regards to which direction these electronic devices are going to go. Are they going to go in the way of cameras and photographic capture, or are they going to go in the way of rodenticide measurements and some of the kind of like other weight measurements and those kinds of things? But tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, with Pest Sense, for anybody who's listening and for anybody who listens, I know where some people are listening now, but there'll be people listening later. With Pest Sense, part of the beauty of it coming to the states is that it's going to be, or it is one of the first ERMs coming to the state where you can actually see the bait consumption live, right? Which is
Mhm.
actually, a lot of people don't realize the levity of that and the importance of that, right? I mean, your average base station, you probably put what, 2 blocks on each rod, right? We're
Yeah,
just going to call it
basically,
what
yeah.
it is. And so the fact that I can now see live this bait consumption, not only does it allow me to basically, plan, the route better, right? Because obviously if I get these alerts and all of a sudden there's all this activity, that's letting me know there's something going on. But the other cool thing about the predictor pestilence device is that it also, another cool thing is that you can also get data on whether they're entering the left or the right side of the device, which is huge, right? Because now we know where they're coming
Right.
from. And then another cool
Yes.
thing is they've actually been able to train the algorithm to know what size of rodent it is, whether it's a rat, whether it's a Norway rat, whether it's a mouse. Like they can literally give you that type of data.
And that's huge because especially like in our area, there's a lot of different rodent populations oftentimes occupying the same spot or the same
Right.
location or feeding on the same large food source. Trash rooms and stuff like that. You starting to get into large urban areas. There's going to be, everything in their mama's going to be feeding on that trash room.
Right. Yeah, and then
Okay.
going back to like the camera AI technology, Sean's on point as far as like I do think that's the wave of the future. I just don't know how long it's going to take, right? Because to train the AI to literally be able to identify insects correctly, I mean, yes, maybe it can tell us it's a roach, but are there other insects that have a similar shape as a roach,
Right.
right? And the way this is the perfect test for anybody. You have Google Photos, right? Anybody have Google Photos?
Mhm.
The app, if
Yep.
you take any picture and you run it through Google Photos, for the most part, it will give you the relatively correct answer. But the reality is, you'll see a bunch of other things pop up that are not the correct answer,
Mhm.
right? And so that's
Yeah.
just a good example of AI technology and what they're doing because they literally, whenever you use Google Photos, it does a little like bubble things, like the little things, and then just trying to basically cross-reference search that across the entire, image library on the internet. So that's literally what we're doing is we're training camera technology to be able to correctly identify whatever picture you're submitting. And so
Yeah.
everything is
I've
possible.
seen it oftentimes returns like overly generic, like it just says bug, right? Like
Right.
that's maybe helpful for you know camera models or AI models, but not very helpful for us as entomologists, bug experts and stuff like that out here in the field trying to deal with a specific pest issue. So is that mean that there's a space or it's worthwhile for someone maybe some grad students out there or anyone who works in the pest or maybe in the software space to be gathering high quality photos of bugs and isolating a large language model to train an AI specifically on pest identification. Like
Did you say is it worth it?
yeah, well, no, I'm saying does that mean that there's a lane, there's an opportunity that someone out there
Yeah.
should be doing this?
I mean, here's the thing you have to think about. Bugs were here before us. They'll be here way after us, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason they say that like a cockroach can survive like, a nuclear bomb, right? Because of like insects have always been able to evolve. I mean, you think about it. Dinosaurs have died off. Different things have died off. Insects have been here forever and they constantly evolve, like constantly.
Right,
And so I
right,
think the
right.
reality is there's definitely a lane for it, but it's going to be a lot of work. I mean, you and I talked about this offline the other day. I mean, you're talking about thousands upon thousands of pictures to train the technology.
Right.
I don't see it being like, here's 10 pictures and we're good to go.
No, but I mean, you would think between some of the major, bug colleges out there, Purdue, Texas A&M, Florida, some of these areas that there couldn't be some kind of collaborative effort where, maybe a few professors in some of their undergrads, take a bunch of high quality identification photos and then, like I said, get that trained on an AI. So it just feels like it's a no-brainer. It should be happening. It should be, and maybe not for the general public, but the first pest control software, whether it's Gorilla Desk or whoever, right, that puts a high quality camera identification AI assisted tool that's not based on trash in, trash out, just whatever Google has, but is actually, properly identified insects. It just feels like they're going to be the kingpin on the market, right? And they're going to be the next big ones to have the best feature out there. I mean, that just seems like a no brainer to me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I just don't know if I see. So the challenging part with software companies, right, is that like I don't know. I mean, like I obviously worked for Surf Suite, and they brought me on because of
Mhm.
my background working with pest control, doing technology. So if we rewind in time, I when I worked for Terminix and I worked for Terminix right after mosquito control, right, and my first job with them was a commercial sales rep. So I did that for a
Mhm.
year, crawled the crawl spaces, did the attics. That's where I told you the story about finding the lovely thing underneath the bed and all that fun stuff, which I need to do on that other podcast, which will be fun. But the horror stories I found of things, and so, but then I got lucky enough to move into a technical director role for Florida, where I covered most of Florida. I helped, I visited all the branches. I worked directly with the branch managers. I trained all the technicians, and so part of that involved they got rid of their old Dolphins and they moved to the CN50. This was back in 2012. And so part of
Yeah, I
that
remember the
role,
Dolphins.
do what?
I remember the Dolphins.
Yeah, so part of that was actually, they literally sent me all the handheld CN50s. It was Intermec was the brand. They sent me all their printers. I had to get all these things set up. I had to do the trainings, create the training guides, and so I love the technology aspect. But that also led to me literally having to go into all of the Kmart's because Terminix took care of the Kmart's at the time, and I had to set up all these Kmart's on these different zones, external zone, interior zone. I had to go set up all the bait stations, the tin cats, like the fly lights, all that stuff. So that was kind of like my first kind of segue into getting all that organized, which was just a really cool opportunity. And then that just 3 years later led to Surf Suite. And so I think where I'm going with this though is that like I don't know of many software companies that have, been smart enough to hire an entomologist.
Oh, well, I'm gonna have to talk to Kim Cal and some of our friends I know that are working in the software space because this just seems like a no-brainer, and maybe they can work with Name That Bug and get that little plug in there, work with you, make the left hand shake with the right hand because this just feels
Right.
like something that is too obvious,
I agree.
and
Yeah.
it would be a great tool for techs in the field to make sure that we're getting proper identification, and that way we're treating, the actual problem and not just, spraying and praying and literally hoping that it solves the issue.
Yeah, 100%. I can't tell you, like, I mean, I'm working on some technical training material right now with my business, but I can't tell you, like, the things that I've seen technicians identify, and they'll send me something, and I'm like, it's kind of like I think you said the other day. I mean, there's a
Horrible about it.
there's technicians that literally can't identify the difference between a bed bug and a carpet beetle larvae, right? And I'm like, and that's fair because in one of those very minor, first or second instars of bed bugs, they can look similar, right? And if you don't know
Sure.
the difference, it's fair. But I'm like, that's part of where I come in with my consulting or somebody else to help do the technical training for these companies because it's so important, right? Because as we well know, treating carpet beetle is not the same as treating bed bugs.
Well, and then also it feels like we see a breakdown in the sense that, like, being let's just, the hard truth realities of the the industry, that being a technician, you're at the bottom of the totem pole, right? There's a lot of much higher up positions to go off and achieve and after. So, your most knowledgeable people, the people with 27 years of experience and who can identify bugs better than anybody else, are almost never the ones actually standing in the customer's living room telling the customer, "Hey, Mrs. Jones, this is the bug you have." Most of the time that's a year one, year two tech, who's get what I'm saying? Like, the
Yeah,
end
but
user really could absolutely use a tool that helps them get the identification correct. So that way the year one, year two techs who are, just getting out there are they're finding a way to tap into your 27 years of experience and your identification abilities, and that way the customer gets the real correct answer and not just whatever that technician's best guess was at that moment. And right now, we've kind of used LTK to help out with that. That's been really cool, where we have a vast network of technicians that are on standby and other entomologists who are on standby, that they can take a quick picture, and within moments they've got someone there to answer it. But it definitely feels like that there's a breakdown there, that those who have the most experience are not always necessarily the ones who are actually telling the customer what they have.
so I've got two responses to that. Number one, this is again where it comes back to like any small pest control owner, any company for that matter. If you don't have an entomologist on staff helping you develop your technical trainings, you're missing an opportunity. right? Because for Marcus or for anybody who's a technician in the field, if they haven't had the proper training and you haven't given them the tools to be successful, then how can you expect them to be successful?
Right.
Right. And then what was number two? Sorry. Oh my god, I had a brain fart. Number one was there. Oh, I hate it.
Fired off. You knew you wanted to mention that number one thing.
Well, I had a number two, but I'm sure it'll come back. So
It's okay.
oh, this is my number two thing. When I was with Terminex, a lot of times I got pulled in to help out with those customer accounts where they couldn't solve an issue, right? The technician had a challenge.
Sure.
Good
Sure.
example is
Sure.
I was in Florida at the time and I had to go to a house in Daytona Beach, not kidding you, $1 million mansion, right? I go to this house and this customer, she takes me into her huge like garden bathtub, right? And not kidding you, the white bathtub was black on the bottom.
Yep.
Black.
Covered in bugs.
Covered in bugs. It turned out it was covered in beetles, right? And so
Mm.
I'm sitting there, I'm like, now the thing is, I got to figure out the source, right? Where are the beetles coming from? So of course I went into the kitchen. I was like thinking, okay, this could be a store product pest. I was like kind of trying to figure it out. Did all this investigation. Finally, I was like, hey, do you mind if what is this door next to your actual garden bathtub? And so I was
Right.
like, it was a closet. So I said, do you mind if I look in the closet? Go into the closet, kind of start looking through, kind of going through her clothes a little bit. And then finally I found this like powder of like dust, right? And then it just basically, oh, I'm sorry for the hearts. it makes me it makes me lead up into the, go above the dust, and then basically takes me to like a jacket or something she had hanging. I reach into the pockets of the jacket. I find an eye pillow, and these beetles were literally emerging out of the eye pillow from the seeds that were in the eye pillow, and it was an eye pillow she had brought back from Japan.
Mm, okay, so they were eating on some kind of organic material inside the pocket of a coat. That
Yeah,
definitely took
no, no,
some
no.
investigating.
They were hatching out of the seeds that were in the eye pillow she brought back from Japan.
Wow.
But my whole point is, a regular technician doesn't have time to sit there and do that. It took me like 4 hours.
Right, right, right.
So a regular technician
I
doesn't
guess
have that
the point
time.
that I'm making is more or less because, like what you said, there have been times where you were called out to like quote unquote problem accounts, right? And
Right.
the point that I'm making is um, oftentimes those high quality assets, the people who have that ability to identify properly, they're deployed as a reactive as opposed to proactive,
Right.
right? And so you're showing up to solve a problem because the customer had already been given either the wrong information or an inadequate treatment or whatever it may be, but they're unhappy, right? And so the idea behind the tool would be, here's something to assist the technician the first go around. That way, they're giving the customer the correct information the first go around, so they don't have to redeploy you after the second, third, and fourth treatments failed. You know what I mean? And you have a very unhappy customer on your hands by that point. And
Yeah.
so I think it's just finding those ways that we can utilize what's at hand or what's upon us, all this new technology, all this new emerging stuff. It's opening up ideas that have just really never been considered because it's never been a possibility. And
Yeah.
so hopefully someone out there hears what I'm saying and they they pull this idea, because I would love to see that kind of technology. And I think it's maybe a little bit labor intensive. I mean, somebody's going to have to do the work, but it would be worth it. It would be worthwhile, and I think it would massively bring value to whichever software brings it first.
I mean, you and I have talked about. I mean, we've talked about different business ideas and different things of like things we could do with cool technology, and there's a ton of opportunity out there. I think at the end of the day, it takes effort to create anything. You know what I mean? And it takes time and energy, and so it's like that's really the challenging part. Is we're all trying to just work our daily lives and bring the bread and the butter to the table, and so it's hard to try to spend that extra time that you have that you don't get back to try to do this other stuff. You know what I mean? But you make a valid point. A university, like a PhD program, this would be a great like PhD program for, a student, hands down.
Absolutely.
Although if I was that
Yeah,
PhD student, I would be signing with my professor that I'm like, I want a piece of the pie.
yeah. Well, I mean, hey, look, this is America. Everybody's got to get paid their fair share. There's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with a good innovation driving good, profitability and some extra money in everybody's pockets. So tell me, you've been around for a while. You've seen the industry evolve over 27 years. That's an incredible amount of time to have watched what's really a young industry. I mean, the EPA didn't really establish FIPRA, FIPNA, until 1972, and so you're talking about, some of even our longest companies have only been around for 100 years, I think, Orkin and them, promote themselves. So in that time you've seen what is your hot take? What is the one thing that we as an industry have either been consistently failing, or that where we're just not getting it right, and that nobody's raising the alarms about it?
Ooh, I think for me, excuse me, even like coming here to Hawaii, right? I don't know if I told you the story, but we got here in July of last year, and we moved into this beautiful apartment. We're close to the beach, and I requested pest control because we were already having bug issues. I think it was, I don't know when the last time there was a treatment here done. We were seeing the big American cockroaches. They call them the B-52s here, but we were seeing those out. We were seeing all, and they have an interesting ground roach here. Like during the evening, it just comes out and feeds on everything outside. They're tiny, but it's very interesting. And so, fast forward though, I requested pest control. They came. All my windows are open here because it's beautiful, right? You want to get the breeze. Like I don't even have the air on right now, and so this is the crazy part. They come. They don't even knock on my door and tell me they're here. They just come and they start spraying around my house, with my windows open, which is obviously a big no-no because there's drift here. Who knows what's going on? That could come in here. That could get into me. That's obviously a big
Right,
no-no.
especially if you
That
had
was
birds, if you
weird.
had pet birds by any chance, that would have been a horrible
Right.
situation.
Yeah, or if my dog's like staring in the window and they spray it. I mean, there's all kinds of things. And so obviously a lot of no-nos on so many levels. Then they come into my house to do the treatment and they have a B&G, and I'm like, hey, can you tell me what's in your B&G? And they say, oh, it's Termidor.
Oh,
And I'm
ooh.
like, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Say that again. Yeah,
Say that
let me
again?
pull out my phone and record you saying that.
Right? And he goes, "Oh, it's Termidor." And I was like, "So did you read the label before you came in here?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "That's the law. You're supposed to read the label before every time you use the product." And
Right,
he's like, "No." And I was like, "Can you go read the label on Termidor?" Because I was like, "You're not legally allowed to apply it inside of any home." I'm like, "You can do a
right,
sub slab injection, but you cannot apply it in any home." And
right,
I was like, "You're only allowed to apply it 4 times a year at the lowest concentration for ants and twice a year at the highest concentration for termites."
right.
And so, and he was like, "How do you know all this?" And I was like, "You stepped into the wrong house, dude." And so I didn't
Someone
like,
who was
I
just trying
wasn't,
to 9 to 5 their way through the end of the workday there. That's all that was.
oh, it gets even
You
better
know.
here. In Hawaii, they wear flip flops and they don't even wear long sleeves. So, I mean, I think my whole point to all of this is that just this alone, being in 2024 when that happened, being in Hawaii, which is a beautiful island where you want to preserve the environment, you want to be a steward of the environment, there's so many things. But this company, which is one of the largest companies here on the island, is applying Termidor how many times a day inside of people's homes. The active ingredient is fipronil. You can apply within 25 feet of a water source. I mean, so many label violations that I'm like, what is I think the whole point of this is that I don't even blame the technician necessarily because they might not have even known, right? They might not have been trained
Right,
properly. So I'm not sitting here
right,
getting
right,
mad at them. I'm actually more concerned with why is this not being, addressed from a higher level?
right. Right, right. Yeah,
And
in
so
fact, actually, that's not the first time I heard I think someone else in our group mentioned that they worked for a company, and obviously they don't work there anymore. And when they made it to the company they work for now, which is a very good company, they're very thankful for the job they have now. They were educated in all the ways that they were out just openly violating labels left and right, and just like you said, using Taurus, which is a kind of similar product to Termidor, and spraying that all over the place, anywhere, everywhere, inside homes, and just not paying attention to the commercial label, or not paying attention to those kitchen labels. And so okay, so your hot take is then that companies have just become way too relaxed on their training, just nationwide, whether you're and is that a failure due to the number, like a lack of inspectors? Is that due to is it too easy to fudge the training certificates, or
I
what is
mean,
causing that? What's the problem with that?
At the end of the day, you think about it. I mean, if you want to go own a company, you have to not only have your regular license, you have to have an operator's license. And let's take one step back. Everybody, the label is
Law.
the law. Thank you. Nice in quotes. The label is the law. So, let's take a step. I mean, as far as like an actual like, pest control, if you want to go out, Marcus, and start your own company, I don't know what it's like. You're in Texas, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like in Texas, but I know you have to have your regular, your pesticide, your whatever you want to call your applicator license. You probably have to
Yep.
have your operator license. To get
Hmm.
all of these, you have to work underneath a pest control company for X number of years, typically. But I'm like, to take
Yep.
that operator exam, that's a relatively tough exam, and you have to have a lot of knowledge. So the
Right.
question is, where is it getting missed? Where is that knowledge getting missed and being passed down? Right? Because you can't just
Right.
hire a pest control technician and just assume they know everything, and that's one of the worst things we can talk about is assuming assumptions. Assumptions are horrible because what do they turn into? They turn into a lack of knowledge. They turn into inconsistencies. They turn into mistakes. That's what they turn into. And so I think the reality is you need to make sure that you have programs set in place, i.e., training programs to ensure that you are, making sure that your technicians have at least that minimum knowledge that you want them to have.
Yeah. Yeah. So sticking on the kind of controversial, topics and kind of the hot topics, the hot debates, there's a lot of talk. I think back in the day when I worked for the Big T, they mentioned something like 97% of the general public does DIY pests or they do their own pest control of some form or another, and that only 3% of the market is actually paying for professional services to come out and take care of their home. Now, I don't know the accuracy behind that, but I remember it was something kind of along those lines that the overwhelming majority of people are taking care of themselves. But the debate starts to happen when it comes to the misuse or abuse of pesticides, particularly rodenticides and other products, where we as professional operators are starting to notice tools from our tool bag disappear, and it's not because people in the industry are misusing these products, but it's because the general end user is using those products. And so the question is, how do we balance, our culture of like freedom and liberty and the ability to do what you want on your land or treat your home as you see appropriate, versus responsible handling of these obviously environmentally impactful products and chemicals. Is retail a problem? Is retail good? Is there a better way to educate the end users as far as like the consumers who are purchasing it over the counter, or should we move in the direction where we ban that across the board and the only way to get access to it is via professional services? What side of the aisle do you fall on?
Yeah, I think I kind of fall on a mixture, right? So like what is it called? Pesty. I think they're out there. So that's the DIY one. I think what I like about Pesty is that from my knowledge, and I don't quote me on it, I think when they send you something, it's already got everything kind of ready for you, right? So I think you just add water to a certain point. They've got that concentration made for you, and then they tell you how to apply it, right? So the beauty of that I love is that, I love the fact that that allows for them to at least be hopefully doing the treatment properly, right?
Right.
Whereas like if I've literally seen TikTok videos where the guy goes and buys like the bottle of the product, off the shelf, and then he's mixing it himself and doing the concentration himself, and there's probably a very very slim chance that they're doing it correctly,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I've heard of crazy things like customers using like Defense SC in its concentrated form and just mixing that with shampoo and washing their dog, right? And
Yeah.
washing their pets with straight up concentrated insect. I mean, so you blame the end user, but also at the same time, their ignorance is justified. I mean, it's not like they're supposed to. I mean, have they? Is there a reasonable expectation that they're supposed to have gone through and put this much effort into knowing the products that you use? Most of us don't even realize what we're shoving in our mouth. When we're eating potato chips.
If it's okay, because I think we're coming up on the hour mark, so I think
Yep.
I think if it's okay with you, maybe we can just kind of finish out, and then we can always come back and do a follow up podcast. I would love to do that. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. We're right here at the 58 mark on the recording.
Well, hey,
I'll tell you
real
what,
quick,
let me ask you one. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
my final remark on this residential pest control thing is that I think that just as we as pest control users and pest control companies have to be responsible and the label is the law, I think every resident should have to do the same thing. They should be reading the label. They should be following it according to the label. So that's
Good
my
answer.
intake on that.
Perfect. Love it. Last 30 seconds. Is there anybody you'd like to see on the LTK podcast? Who should we interview next?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. I'm trying to think of who you should interview. Have you interviewed Sylvia yet?
Not yet, but we're looking forward to having her do one of our trainings for the ACE groups. So I'll reach
Yeah, I
out
mean,
to her.
and I've already told Sylvia I'd love to partner with her on that. And so, just my final thing on this is that for anybody who is watching, if you want to reach me, I can be reached at 352-408-6122 and or Adam Holt BCE at gmail.com. You can go to my LinkedIn. You can book me through Calendly. I would love to help you make your day a better day and bring those efficiencies to the table for you.
Perfect. Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate you for coming out. Name that bug, guys. Y'all make sure to check him out. Support our friend here, and we'll see you around on the next one.
Bye, everybody. Mahalo.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning into the License to Kill podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful, informative, and engaging. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. It really helps us to reach more listeners like you. Have a question or a topic that you'd like us to cover in a future episode? Connect with us through our Facebook, YouTube, and most importantly, our Discord. Until next time, this is your host, Marcus, reminding you to stay sharp, stay legendary, and stay connected.